Here in Washington, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are motivating policymakers to look for ways that wars can be prevented. VOA's Carolyn Turner has the story.
The attacks on September 11, 2001, compounded with the costly U.S. military campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, have brought home the realization that more than U.S. military power is needed to provide American security. Washington's global war on terror has raised deep concerns about the magnitude of expense and resources deployed to capture Osama bin Laden, as well as the militarization of aid or the securitization of development on the ground. Recently, at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, the subject was addressed in a panel discussion titled "Waging Peace." The discussion explored the inextricable links between security and development with a focus on defense and diplomacy. Much of the debate was about Kenya, where security and the economy have been challenged. But Kenya's ambassador to the U.S. sees improvements.
By the way, in the new constitution, our Bill of Rights has now enshrined the very basic needs of food, water, access to education, and health care as basic rights enshrined in the Kenyan constitution, and so that gives me hope.
Under discussion was a book titled "It Happened on the Way to War." The book tells the story of how Rai Barkot sought to understand ethnic groups. He later served as a U.S. Marine in the Horn of Africa, where he worked with two Kenyans to build a non-governmental organization in the slums of Nairobi to develop a new generation of leaders. The organization, called Carolina for Kibera, or CFK, is a model program.
How do you unlock the potential of this place? And it's not simply the potential of Kibera, but also communities like it around the world, but also communities in the United States that are affected by cycles of violence and poverty. How do you unlock that potential? And, complicated question, complicated answer. We don't have a full answer. We're still sort of wrestling with it. But I think that it has to begin with a recognition that the change has to come from within the community itself. And it can't be imposed on the outside, but as outsiders, we can play a role. We can play a constructive role. And that's really the heart of participatory development.
Joel Barkan of the Center for Strategic International Studies says there has to be certain conditions.
For participatory development to thrive, there must be peace, and there must be not only what's bubbling up from the bottom, but there must be a framework to enable that creativity to emerge at the top.
Barkot says he took the tools he learned fighting as a Marine to wage peace and applied the community-building skills to Kenya.
The military should do as little capacity building work as possible. What I mean by that is that the military's fundamental competency is really in fighting our wars. And that is a different skill set from development work. At times when the level of violence is high, we need to engage in it. That was the case for what I saw in Fallujah, Iraq in 2005, 2006. But as soon as the level of violence abates, we need to rely more on the resources, our soft power resources of development and diplomacy.
The senior conflict advisor of USAID, Eugene Bonventre, says Kenya is a good example.
As we grow the relationship between the military and civilian organizations, we can't change the military too much. Secretary Gates said the military will never be a Peace Corps with guns.
Barkot's book is capturing a lot of attention. He says social entrepreneurship is a buzzword for looking at innovative ways to create social benefits like Carolyn Kibera, which is based in the Kenya slums, but employs American volunteers from the University of North Carolina.
The volunteers don't set the agenda. The local team of Kenyans in this particular community run the organization. They call the shots. And that's the only way that this can be sustainable. Social entrepreneurship, in our case, really fundamentally comes back to participatory development and the recognition that the change has to happen from within.
Barkan says an extraordinary force is emerging.
What I regard as probably the most exciting element of Kenyan society and elsewhere in Africa, and that is this emergent group of highly educated, young men and women ranging from roughly mid-20s to 40, who are fed up with the old ways of governance. They want accountable governance.
This Kenyan model for participatory development is attracting widespread interest because it requires choices to be made by the local population and could potentially preempt the need for dangerous and costly military involvement. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.